Hello, sweet souls, and welcome to the We Are the Medicine podcast. I am your host, Dania Anastasia. I am a spiritual being having a human experience as a planter of seeds, alternative medicine practitioner, and trail guide on the path of life. We Are the Medicine is an exploration of the human experience through our stories. Our stories heal, our stories are our medicine, our experiences are our medicine. This is how we learn, grow, inspire, expand, and connect. My hope is that you will listen for inspiration and deeper understanding of how your individual life plays a role in that of the collective. I also hope to engage you, the listener, in conversations around your own dinner tables, in cafes and boardrooms, so that we may all begin to hold space for one another. Welcome to the show.
Chitra Eder. Chitra is an Ayurvedic doctor who began as an energy healer looking for a language for what she did naturally. After a 20-year exploration, finally landing on Ayurveda, the whole, complete, proven ancient system of medicine that encompasses all holistic practices, including nutrition, massage, yoga, essential oils, lifestyle modifications, and so much more. Since 1997, Chitra has been working with clients who were going from one practitioner to another, trying to find the root cause of their dis-ease. She also found herself working with people who had become disillusioned by the Ayurveda that was presented to them from India. Chitra also worked with COVID, offering Ayurvedic wisdom and tools to physicians who were pretty clueless in the early days of the pandemic, as well as working with long COVID patients. She has found that she loves working with misunderstood menopausal women, bringing refreshing and unorthodox solutions that help them remove the many symptoms of menopause without making it all about hormones. Getting to the root cause of those symptoms, because menopause is unavoidable if you are lucky to live long enough to have it. And she sets them on a path of rejuvenation. She currently lives and works in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the traditional land of the Pueblo of Sandia. She's a mom to 4 cats who are forever walking in front of her Zoom camera seeking attention. She is currently committed to dedicating the remainder of her life to the promotion of Ayurveda, specifically as it pertains to menopausal women, making sure that a woman's health is more respected, her natural processes not medicalized, and by offering Ayurvedic solutions to a healthy transition and beyond. Welcome to the show, Chitra. Hello and welcome to this episode of We Are the Medicine podcast. I am deeply honored and so excited to speak with my new guest, Chitra Eder. She is a doctor of Ayurveda, recently received her certification. So excited to bring this forth to my listeners, to anyone who is experiencing anything to do with menopause, because that's what she's specializing in, women's health. And she has a Facebook group I just want to mention really quick. It's called Menopause No More. And her beautiful tagline is menopause is unavoidable, but the symptoms are entirely optional. So welcome, Chitra.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you and to finally see you face to face. We've known each other for, I don't know how many years, and really happy to be here.
So it's just so exciting, all the shifts that are happening on the planet, especially with Ayurveda, and with women finally coming into their own, finally stepping up and taking their health into their own hands, as it should be, as the way the world has kind of led us down this path of listening to everybody else but ourselves.
Yeah, and in truth, we as women have to start just talking about it, because somehow the medical system intervened in our bodily processes and did research on men. So our biological systems run very differently. Any sort of disease that might happen to a man a woman might have the same thing, but their symptoms are going to be different. The processes are going to be different. And that's why I love Ayurveda, because we're really looking at you as an individual, not only as a woman, but individual, who you are, what your entire life experience has been, where you are physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. It's all encompassed into Ayurveda. And I chose perimenopause to postmenopause as my main focus, because even within Ayurveda, we don't really talk about that much. They talk about a woman's menses quite a bit. They talk about childbirth. Actually, Ayurveda starts with childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about postpartum, but what happens for 50% of your life? There is not that much discussion around it. And I think it's simply because women have lost the communication between one another. So those parts were just not written down. Wasn't that important for society itself, but it's important to us. And so I'm really excited about this opening field, because it's happening everywhere, whether it's holistic medicine or Ayurveda, or even in regular, the medical system, it's opening up. Actually, so in my previous life, which ended on Wednesday, I worked for a co-op. I was a wellness department manager. So I worked with a lot of the trends and teachings of vitamins and nutraceuticals and hormones, all of those things that would go into your local health food store. And they said the trend was, guess what? Menopause. So they're now beginning to really look into it, because we're finally talking and we're speaking out about it. And we don't have to age the same way our parents did, if we know what that even is.
Right. I don't remember having many conversations with my mother about any of it. Even when I got my cycle, it was kind of a small opening in the bathroom door, and I got the box thrown at me, like, here you go. And I guess I just figured it out, right? And then I actually helped my two younger sisters with understanding it, but it wasn't that she didn't care. It wasn't that, she didn't have that nurturing part of her. She just wasn't taught that by her mother either. And so it just gets passed on that way. And later on, I'll get into my menopause story, because I've been trying to find time over the last few years to just explain it to you at least once, and we haven't done that yet. So I'm just so thrilled that I've watched your progression of your studies and your giving back of service to the community that you serve. And I'm just beside myself that now I know avidya, right? This is awesome. So we're going to jump right in. And I know we kind of talked a little bit when I ask people to talk about their life and how they've gotten to this point so far. Definitely feel free to jump around. Whatever parts you find worth valuable for where you are today, and it could be everything. You can, we have a limited time together, but just feel free to jump in and start wherever you'd like. So how has your life brought you to this place in time?
What a great question. And I could probably go on and on and on around it, because it's been a long life. And I say I've lived many lives. I've been the type of person that has always embraced change, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how happy it is. If things needed to change, off I went to that next adventure. So I guess I'm going to start with, I kind of lived a pretty normal teenage life growing up in the 70s and 80s, where, we were all experimenting with, well, I wouldn't say all, but many of us were experimenting. The 60s had ended, drugs were available before AIDS. So life was just like, okay, let's go drink, let's experiment with whatever. And there was one day when I was just drinking a lot. Just because that was just the norm.
Yes.
And I said to my friend, "So, do you think I'm an alcoholic?" And a friend of mine, Barry, said, "No, I don't think you are." And I was like drinking. I was going out at night, going to work during the day, and drinking during lunch. All of that. And then I said to myself, that night, I said, I think I am. No, I think I am an alcoholic. And the next day I just stopped. Not only did I just stop, I also like detoxed my entire life. I left the guy I was living with. I stopped meat. I stopped milk. I stopped sugar. I started running, and smoking cigarettes. Right. So all of this was like in my late 20s. No, yeah, it was in my mid 20s. Just stopped. And so I detoxed and whatnot, and still had no clue what I wanted to do with my life, because there was something that was unique to me, that I mean, it was just an experimental time for me. I had been involved with yoga. So somehow I found a book when I was 12 years old, and it was a yoga book, and I practiced it a little bit. But shortly after I detoxed everything, I ran into a person who told me that I had to be at some workshop. It was a sacred geometry workshop in Texas. I was living in New York at the time. And I'm like, what? Okay, fine. And I end up going there. And I walked into the space, and there were all these people lying down on the ground. With one person was lying down on the ground. There was another person with their sitting down with their hands against the head. And I was like, oh my God, what did I walk into? This is nuts. And
this is an intervention. I don't need this. What is this?
and some woman looked up at me and she said, "You sit here, you're a healer." And I'm like, what? What's a healer? So I just did that. And the person who I was offering whatever energy that was at the time, they had this out of body experience. And I ended up, rather than staying for like 3 days, I stayed for 2 weeks. I came back to New York, and there was nothing else. I mean, like everything else fell away other than being a healer. But it was so early in this time frame that I had to find out what it was that I did. So I got my Reiki so that I had a name for whatever it was. I worked with this curandera and the shamans back in the day, and, Reiki, energy work, all of those kinds of things. But I also noticed that people were beginning to make up different techniques. It just didn't make sense to me. They were putting their name on this thing and charging hundreds of dollars, and I ended up, so I just kept looking for a language for what it was that I did. And I ended up with Carolyn Mace and Dr. Norm Shealy, and I became a medical intuitive. I was in their first class of medical intuition. We started out with like 350 people and ended up with 38, after 5 years. It was a big, long process. Talk about like stirring the pot. Life kept happening. And then in the middle of that, my Shani period hit. Shani is Saturn. So I had a big time frame. We call it Shani Mahadasha, where the Saturn phase of my life. So I had things dying off and whatnot. Just shortly before 2011, I ended up moving to Florida to do some caregiving for my mother and father. Interestingly enough, that was that point, which is 9/11 happened shortly after I had left. And today is 9/11 as well. So I just kind of want to honor that shift. So I ended up going to Florida, and I was caregiving, and like everything in my system had fallen away. I had people dying left and right. It was just horrible. But I ended up going to massage school so that I would be able to use my hands to touch people, because that's the laws in Florida.
Right.
And I also had a yoga studio there. And in massage school, I discovered Ayurveda because there was an Ayurvedic massage technique. And so I just discovered it. I didn't really go into it. I had my yoga, I had my massage, and yoga and Ayurveda weren't so intimately linked as it is today. At the time, Ayurveda was barely known, at least in the United States, at least on the East Coast, and certainly in Florida. The part of Florida that I lived in, which was Northeast Florida. So moving forward, I ended up getting married, and I opened up my yoga studio. Had to close because there were hurricanes. And yeah,
that'll do it.
And I ended up getting married, and we opened up a business called Flagler Organics, where we brought organic foods into a place that was a food desert. And at the time, my husband said, "Hey, go to your heart is in Ayurveda," because I was looking at it. And so I ended up coming to Albuquerque and studying at the Ayurvedic Institute. Unfortunately, life was happening because I still had my Shani period. So I only went for a short period of time, and I ended up going back to Florida. My husband was sick, and yeah, it was difficult, and he ended leaving the body. And I had made a promise to him that I would return to Albuquerque and finish my studies. And so I've done that. Not in the way that I had intended to, or the way I had promised him to, but I did. I think I went beyond. I ended up returning to Albuquerque, but in between, I had studied so much of Ayurveda that I couldn't go back to the Ayurvedic Institute. I had also met Dr. Sanjay Pisharodi, and this is when you and I started communicating. So I ended up assisting, editing, and translating a version of the Ashtanga Hridayam, which is one of the ancient Ayurvedic texts. With him, we published it. And it was specifically to translate Ayurveda for the Western mind, because our sense of things is different. Our lifestyles are different. It's just different. We don't come up in the world knowing what a dinacharya is. And for those of you who don't know what dinacharya means, it's your daily routine. and in India they do. And there's just very, very different, mentalities. Our lifestyles are so much more stressful. Our work ethic, our puritanical work ethic is just infused into our lives. So I ended up in Albuquerque. I ended up completing my schooling as a doctor of Ayurveda. And I looked around and I said, well, how do I continue to translate this science of life to the lives here in America, in the United States? Europe doesn't have the same culture, Canada doesn't have the same culture, but I live here. I know this area and I know womanhood, or at least my experience of women. And so I decided, where am I needed most?
Mm.
And so for me, it was women going through perimenopause and postmenopause. So that's how I got here today. It's a lot. I know. It took a lot of time.
It's brilliant. I don't know how I keep finding you women, or we just keep finding each other, because everyone that I've interviewed, we all have this strange parallel life that we've lived in various pieces all over. So thank you for that story. Thank you for sharing how you got here today. I think that your intuition of guiding, as it has been guiding you since way before you knew what to even call it. And I really believe that once you've recognized what that is within yourself, and this goes for everybody, the listeners, women, men, humans, you really can't go back. And I think that that is what is pulling me to do what I'm doing these days as well. We have got to start tapping into our own wisdom. We have got to start bringing that forward. And so, how is the Menopause No More going? I can't wait to talk to you a little bit in detail about this direction that you're going. How are you being received? How does it feel doing now, working in this?
So it's, as I said, my life, my old life just ended. I was working Menopause No More for the last year or so, and I am stunned at the reception. I am stunned. I literally have women coming in crying. This is the first time that they've been heard. This is the first time that they can talk to other women, that they don't feel crazy, that there's like this opening in their head to realize, what, you mean I don't have to suffer with this? I don't have to be crazy. This is not normal menopause. And just to have women get that, and to create a community where they can talk about it, and not just talk about the suffering, because we're all suffering at some point in time, but just to have that it's like the cherry on top of all of the wonderful things that I've experienced in my life so far. And just opening the community, and just speaking to women like you, it's just so amazing. So yeah.
Well, and I think that we have not been taught to embrace the changes that our bodies go through.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know how old I was, where I was, but I remember this woman who was in front of me. We were speaking, and she was talking about her daughter who had just gotten her cycle. And she had planned a beautiful day for her. Like, she took her out for lunch. She bought her flowers. She really celebrated this 11-year-old girl for transitioning into, and I'm getting chills and emotional, into this next stage of her life. And I was floored that someone had the wherewithal to actually do that. And I believe so much that all these transitions that we go through in our life, they deserve to be celebrated, especially now, the moving towards the Vata stage of life, the last beautiful transformation that we have before the final big transformation, right? And I don't know, and you actually touched on it earlier, that the medical system across the board has usually been male dominated. Studying men, studying the biology of the male. And not that we've been cast aside, but we have just not been celebrated at all, let alone enough. And so this is just the beginning of so many more Menopause No More groups and women coming together to, I just saw a client of mine in the store the other day, and she had come to me a while ago asking for menopause advice. And I gave her what I could based on what I know so far. I am base level Ayurveda, going for my practitionership soon, but I'm definitely not, and doctors of Ayurveda still don't know everything, right? We keep learning every time someone gets in front of us. And so I asked her how things were going, and she slumped her shoulders, she rolled her eyes and leaned on her cart and said, ugh. And that's every woman I have ever spoken with about this. And one day, those 11, 12-year-old girls who are being celebrated for getting their cycles and moving into a womanhood stage are going to be the ones to celebrate this more and more and more and more. And I cannot wait for that day. Cannot wait for that day.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about that, the health of that young woman at that time is going to inform how she's going to go through menopause, because it's celebrated. It's nothing. The emotional states around it is just going to be so very different for her. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah, I always think of that every time one of my friends' little ones have moved through that transition. I say, maybe some flowers would be really nice for her today. It almost feels like it's been women's dirty little secret their whole lives, that you just have to deal with this instead of embracing what it really means for your body, for your health, for the health of the planet, for other women. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just kind of jump right in with my quick little story about how I entered menopause. The only thing I knew about it from my mother was that her late 40s into early 50s, it happened, it was done, it was over. Like, there was nothing to really talk about. And I don't know if that was just because she didn't know how to or what, but I was 48 and I have not had children before. So, and throughout my whole life, my cycle had been very problematic, just severe cramping to the point where I had to call in sick to work at least the first day. if not the second as well. And through stepping into Ayurveda later in my cycle, I learned ways of managing it without having to, sleep all day and take ibuprofen. But my husband at the time and I decided to do a juice cleanse. And it was going to be for 10 days. And it was going to be just, we actually went to the store and took pictures of this beautiful layout of all this wonderful, gorgeous, beautiful foods. And we juiced everything. We juiced kale and broccoli and, pineapple and you name it. It was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we did it together because we knew that we had to have each other's back when those emotional mood swings and the withdrawals came in from caffeine. And I was on the tail end of my cycle when we started. And it ended, of course. And then at the end, when we finished on day 11, my cycle started again. And I thought that was really strange. But in the reading that I had done, doing a fast for that long can reset your whole body system, right? Because a lot of times that's kind of why people do it, is to get this reset, this cleaning, this detox. And so I went through the week, of that. And I went about 2 months and I didn't have it. And then I got it again. And then I didn't have it for 6 months. And then I got it again for 2 months. And then I didn't have it for 6 months. And then I had it every single week for almost a month. And then I haven't had it since. So that went on till I was about 50, 51-ish. Yeah, about 50 actually it stopped because that, yeah. And so I didn't really question my body, what was going on. I wasn't in a lot of pain. I had some, hot flashes that unfortunately were misconstrued by my partner at the time for, when you start taking off all your layers of clothes. And you have to give him that little eye that, no, this isn't an invitation. I'm just really hot right now. And then you get really cold and then you put all your clothes back on again and you wake up and you've got like sweat on the back of your neck and it's just dripping off of you. And I had always had fluctuating mood swings anyway, but it was, I knew I could feel them coming on. So I would remove myself from interacting with anybody until I was able to work through that. But I believe that doing that juice fast kind of set my body into I don't know if it was premature or not. I don't know if women who do not have children go into menopause early. So maybe that's something that you can kind of walk me through and maybe help me understand it a little more. Everything's fine now. My body is working the way it's supposed to be working, and I'm happy, and thank God there's no more sweat dripping down my face every time I do anything. So yeah, so that's my journey with that.
So let's look at that. I took a little notes about your mom because you said that she was 40, somewhere between 40 and 50, around the same age as you.
Yep.
When it happened.
Yep.
But for her, it was, did she say that it was like no big deal?
It was absolutely no big deal. No
Yeah.
big deal. One day it just stopped and it never came back.
And many women of that generation, that's true for. And prior generations, which is why I say, you don't have to suffer with those symptoms. It's going to happen. In that generation, they had a very clean life. So the stressors were not the same. There were little to no pesticides and chemicals in their food. Which means that there were no additional phytoestrogens in their foods as well. And they also, their work levels were very different. They may have thought that they were some of them were not, they thought that they were feminists and should go out in the world and be in the world, but they didn't have this drive to be masculine, which is what many women today do. Your generation came up in a way where, yeah, there was not microwave foods, but maybe TV dinners, with all of these foods that were prepared for us. They were preserved and all of those kinds of things. So that's the start of why it's Rasa Dhatu is that start, right? Rasa Dhatu is your blood, right? So it starts from the blood levels where it's not clean. When those levels are, that tissue is not clean and healthy, it cannot build healthy tissues on top of it.
Right.
So we have all of these other things that need to be dealt with before we even go down to the level of what happens to a woman when she's going through this change, because she's literally going from a place where she can have babies to not having babies, and that's a completely different biological function, because everything up until your 20s and maybe 30s is already a little bit old for the body. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't have children, but it just gets harder and harder to conceive. It gets harder and harder to carry. It gets harder and harder to raise, because the body is doing its aging thing already.
Yeah.
At that point in time. So I wouldn't say that the juice itself kickstarted it. What the juice did was that it stopped putting all kinds of other chemicals and preservatives into your system so that your body could finally digest and eliminate whatever toxins, whatever was already in the gut, whatever was in that Rasa Dhatu, it just allowed it to move out. So that's what it started. And for women, having your period is a detoxification of sorts.
Exactly.
Right? So what we as women have to do once we stop that is we want to continue with detoxification processes. And at the time when you were doing that green juice, I was, involved in that same kind of, no, I was doing it before. The green juice is really nice. Oh my God, I'm detoxifying, but it's a little too strong for the body. You want to work out, because that's why people are on the toilet all the time. They're in bed, whatever it is that they're doing is they're eliminating. So the beauty of Ayurveda is to assist in that detoxification process. But what you never did was rebuild afterwards.
Right.
So the body was trying to return to some sort of normalcy for those months, and years. Even though it was going through that period, it's still trying, because it's constantly trying to do its best. That's what it does for us.
Right.
The body has an intelligence of sorts, and its main job is to keep us alive. And keep itself alive.
Keep these meat suits working.
Yeah. So that's so it triggered a detoxification process. And my question to you was, did you nourish yourself while that was going on or not?
Well, it's a very good question. I do know that that was definitely some of the more traumatic part of my life. My mother had passed. My marriage was crumbling, and then 2020 hit.
And this is what's so sad about many women. It comes at a time of life where not only is your body changing, but everything changes. Your role in society is changing. you realize that the choices that you made may not be the right choices for you, or you fell into something that you shouldn't have fallen into. And now you've got the wisdom to go, oh, I need to get out of this. Whatever. So it all happens at once. Menopause is not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing, and it's a societal thing. It really is. We need society to support us, and we need to create groups like Menopause No More so that we can offer assistance, in whatever way that we can. If it's just through the stories, fine. But if it's actual, here, do this,
Right.
or here, this might explain that, that's the beauty of it.
I was triggered to say something when you mentioned the generation that's kind of in the main workforce now, that women are forgetting their feminine energies because it's all about being independent and I can do it myself, and masculine energies of doing, and not receiving and resting and replenishing and recharging. Every single one of my female clients have ailments on the right side.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the right side is the masculine, right?
Yeah. It's the overdoing. It's the overachieving. It's the proving.
Right.
And their left sides are either weak, or they know every time I ask the question, how are you in receiving? Are you able to receive love? Like when someone offers you a compliment, what is the first thing innately do you say? Oh, this whole thing? No, we dumb it down. We completely shut down because we have not stayed connected to the feminine side.
Right.
At all. It's not even part of our it's just so interesting and enlightening as to why humans are experiencing these things. And they just think it's because I fell down and, hurt my wrist, or, whatever. And when I bring them this information of feminine, masculine energies, they kind of, well, at first, obviously, they just kind of take a step back and give me that look. But then I say these things that, are you able to receive a compliment? Are you able to allow yourself to rest? Well, no. Well, no. And like, are you trying to make this connection with people? And I think they're finally getting it. They're finally realizing it's not about being a man. It's not about being a woman. It's that all of us as humans have this feminine, masculine, energetic balance, that when that balance is out of balance, our human form is going to show signs of it.
And here's a thought. I think even our concept of what is feminine has been masculinized.
You just made a new word. Yes.
Because not only are we doing more, but we have to be the perfect mom. We have to, we don't get to sit in stillness. We have to work through to be feminine. We're calling each other queens. It's like, I don't want to be a queen. Yeah. I don't want to be a goddess. That's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure.
Concern.
Yeah.
So it's even that's been twisted into this overdoing, over puritanical, over guilt-ridden, over everything, creating a lot of heat within our systems and creating a lot of airiness, because you're going to be stressed and anxious all the time, thinking that you're going to forget something, and then you get the brain fog, and that makes of menopause, and that makes it even worse.
Right. And as you're moving into the Vata stage of life, you're just adding more air to an already air-filled situation, right?
Air-filled and fire-filled.
And fire-filled, because fire needs air to
Yeah.
expand.
Yeah. So it's a really difficult situation that women have put themselves in, because we still have not gotten rid of, do for the give.
Yeah.
Don't, whether it's at the workplace or not. It's still, last night I was having a conversation with a woman who was like, yeah, my makeup is just the kind that if somebody else at my office doesn't do something or feels uncomfortable, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to take care of it. And it's like, yep, that's a very toxic situation that we put ourselves in. And we forget that no is a complete sentence.
Silence is a sentence too.
Silence is a sentence as well. Not comfortable as well.
And I know if I was listening to this, I'd be like, well, what are you doing? You're blaming me, right? You're blaming me for this. You're blaming me for all these things that are happening to me. And it's not an individual blaming basis. It's not even a, male or female blaming thing. This is happening because we have forgotten the true essence of just what it means to be a human on this planet. So that runs all across the board with everything. And we get, our beliefs and our conditioning and our society and everything just tells you who you're supposed to be. And with your parents, they did the best they could with what they had. And we're just striving to be something that we were never meant to be. Like, it's not supposed to be hard. Life is not supposed to be difficult and a race to compete with every single person out there to get the biggest, better pile of things.
Yeah. And you're so right. This is the pool in which we're swimming in.
Yes.
And, at some point in time, it swung in a very, what is the word I'm looking for? And I don't want to use the word, an imbalanced state. And then came along a generation of women, and we're part of that, where we're trying to rebalance. And unfortunately, the Rebalancing Act is forcing us to go in an extreme direction just to get back to some sort of center. And all the while, women's traditions were lost because they weren't really written down. They were just passed on from one woman to another. So, I think that there is a lot of hope, though, that we don't have there's it's not about blaming, and it's not about shaming. It's simply about, this is what is. Now that I know what is, then I can make decisions and move through them. I can decide that I'm not going to take on every single activity out there. I am not going to exhaust myself to get that next prize, whatever that prize is for you, to get that next accolade. I am going to make sure, it's like when I left my job and I came back to Ayurveda, I put together an ideal week for myself, which I'm going to massage, because I knew that I couldn't take care of myself in an Ayurvedic way, in a way that I wanted to, and so I created this work week, and I'm fitting in the things that I want to into that. Some women don't have the luxury of doing that, but you can still say, okay, so here's my 9 to 5, and I'm going to cut out things that just don't work. It's one thing that really worked as far as my schedule was concerned, was I said that I am not going to do any spontaneous plans, meaning that if someone called me last night to do something this afternoon, so this is what I do. Oh yeah, I'll go. I love that. You know, it's going to help me so much. I really want to do it. But come the next morning, it's like, why did I agree to that? I don't want to go to it. So to avoid all of that nonsense, I said to myself, I am not going to agree to that. And I literally use my calendar. Now, it's not a hard, fast rule, obviously. Nothing is hard, fast. There's a little flexibility, but I literally use that calendar to say, you know what? This doesn't, let me know the next time this is happening early enough so I really want to go. But my life, the plans that I have made for myself are just as important for me, for my sanity, for my health, for my well-being. So that's one little tip that I do to help with that sort of thing. And that, in a sense, removes some of the stress and anxieties that we have in life, is to just like be really intentional about where you're spending your time, when you're spending it. And you can have that spontaneous thing. It's just a little planned.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I can talk to you for days.
Yes, we could. And we should.
And we should, and we will. There's no should. We're not going to should all over ourselves. We are going to, I am going to have you back because unfortunately we're at the end of our time right now. So where, it's going to be in the show notes, but can you just explain out loud to people where they can find you, where they can connect with you for all the beautiful things that you offer?
So if you are in Albuquerque, I have an office here. It's at The Source, and you can just Google Ayurveda with Chitra, and I can spell that out, Ayurveda with, that's the word with, Chitra, CHITRA.com. Or you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on, I'm not, well, I do have some YouTube, but not much.
Okay.
Not yet. On Instagram. So you can find me in all of those places. I'm hosting a grand opening September 18th. I don't know if this is going to come out by then here in Albuquerque, but for the entire month of September, I'm just going to have a celebration month with online forums and things like that, so that you can connect with me, you know where to find me. And yeah, that's really the best way to connect is, and you can always do, if you want to email, hello@ayurvedawithchitra.com.
Good, very good. And so you, I'm assuming, aren't just available for people within your local. If someone from New York or Pennsylvania wants to get with you to do a review of their life and their situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I work with clients throughout the world. I've worked with people from Australia, different time zones. I think the most important thing is to make sure that you vibe with the person that you're going to be working with. That's a good fit.
Yeah.
Because Ayurveda, as beautiful as it sounds, it's not an easy process. It is work. It is change of lifestyle. It is going into self. It is creating new habits for self. But I think we all come out so much more vibrant and more rejuvenated. And that's basically here. And my job is to assist in rejuvenating you, and so that we don't take you out of your life, but we help you live your life better, so that you can still go and take your vacations and enjoy your vacation. You don't have to eat separately from the rest of your family. It's not about working harder. It's It's simply about incorporating Ayurveda, and you don't have to eat Indian food all the time too. That's another big,
It is kind of a big misconception,
right?
isn't it?
And you don't have to be a vegetarian.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of misconceptions, but our jobs, at least my job, is to translate Ayurveda into the world, into the United States, into our time, into our place, and to make sure that each woman can utilize it. Because if you just make one change, you're going to notice a big, huge difference. Just one change. And it
Great.
doesn't have to be big.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sweet soul. Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, I've so enjoyed this time together.
I have
And
to.
I will be having you back. So no spontaneous meetings. We will be scheduling this.
Yes. Absolutely.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that wraps up another episode of We Are the Medicine podcast. Wanted to take a moment to thank you and to let you know that I am grateful and I appreciate you so much. I see you. I hear you. I do understand. If you feel called, subscribe to my channel, like, share, comment with it, and check out my website for future happenings, daniaanastasia.com. That's all for now. I love you so much. It's crazy.